Hi, everybody. My name is Johnson Chong, and in this video, I'm going to talk about shamanic energy healing, somatic healing, what healing does as a role in your life, and how it plays out in the body, how energy moves through the body. And this is really a video to see how energy is perhaps flowing through you in your physical expression and also playing out in your life. And, my role as a shaman, I'm going to debunk a little bit that myth of what shaman actually means. My role as a shaman is to bridge the gap between the physical material world and the unseen world of energy. So, in the past 15 years, I've been working with a lot of clients on various issues, and the root cause is always energetic. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means. What does energetic root cause mean? And we're going to talk about the chakras. And in the chakra field, there's going to be a little bit of a self-assessment quiz where you can get your journal out and rate yourself from a scale of 1 to 10 and see really how your energetic map is. And so a little bit about myself and this work before we go into this whole presentation about shamanic healing. So I was initiated as a shamanic energy medicine practitioner by the high Andean priests. They call them Pacos in Peru. We know them as shamans, but shaman is actually a word that comes from the East, from Sanskrit, and it comes from the root word sramanas, which means the spiritual seeker, one who's looking for a higher truth. And so I like to think of the word shaman as one who is trying to find a deeper meaning to life. And when we're going on a shamanic journey, oftentimes you hear people going on vision quests, or they're taking plant medicine, or they're doing various types of ritual ceremonial practices with drumming or rattling, and they go into an expanded state of awareness where they can meet a higher guide. So people who have had near-death experiences often come back from the other side and they say, oh, I met my higher self, or I met an angel, or I met some guide. Shamanic journeying and shamanic work, we can access that state while we're here. We don't necessarily all have to go through a near-death experience to get that. And many cultures across the world, indigenous wisdom traditions, have some way of connecting to the unseen world, to connect to ancestors. You may have had, let's say, I recently had my uncle pass away, right? And I'm sure, everyone has had probably some relative pass away, or someone near and dear to you, and maybe you've dreamt of them, right? Sometimes they come and visit you in dreams. So, you're probably having shamanic experiences without necessarily putting that label to it. And it's just a label. So, we can get rid of that label and really just look at this as a way to connect deeper into ourselves, into the energy in which we're feeling, our vitality, and then how we express that as our purpose into the world. And so I'm also trained as a Reiki master. And so I've worked in that modality of energy. I've studied martial arts growing up, and also I'm a yoga practitioner. I've been teaching and training teachers how to teach yoga. So I have this sense of not just physical anatomy and gesture, and how the body, for example, people who are really upset, or their clothes are guarded, there's this gesture that's closed in the arms, right? If there's this openness and this receptivity, the chest looks a certain way, or if there's a scowl on someone's forehead, right? These are gestures that the body does physically, right? And we all probably have an intuitive sense when someone angry walks into a room, or someone who is maybe a bit sad, they walk in, that we can pick that up. The physical gesture has an energetic component. And that's what I'm very interested in. How does that play together? The physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, the energetic. And this is how I look at shamanic healing. So I'm going to do a little presentation with slides. And let me start at the beginning here. So what is shamanic energy healing? Well, let's look at what healing is. Healing, I see healing as the complete process. Complete healing is the process of resolving dense and negative patterns that stem from belief systems, stress, emotional overwhelm, which then express as physical ailments or disease. When these patterns dissolve, the fragmented mind-body energy system transitions into a state of unity and coherence. So when we look at holistic models like in yoga or in Chinese medicine or even in the indigenous traditions in Peru, they also have a chakra system that follows a very similar model as the yogis. They look at the mind, the body, and the spirit as being fragmented when there is disease or when there is some sort of emotional ailment. And not everything is, here's a prescription, go to the doctor, then the pharmacist, and take your pills and go. A lot of the ailments that we're experiencing with mental health in our modern day is a byproduct of us losing connection with our soul, like the spiritual unseen elements that were so important to all indigenous cultures hundreds and thousands of years ago. We've lost connection to the earth. We've lost connection to ritual and ceremony, right? And so complete healing really is about getting lighter. When we are feeling stressed or we're having some sort of chronic physical injury or ailment, there is an underlying energetic cause, right? And we're going to look at that. So these are the different layers of healing that we can experience. So just as I said, the physical symptoms, which here is represented by the orange circle in the middle, that may be the thing that's bothering you. But there is there's this other subtle realm of emotional reasons as to why that physical thing is happening. Then there's a mental thing that's happening in relationships to the physical symptom. Maybe there's an ancestral thing, meaning that it's a pattern from your father's line, maybe your mother's line, and then maybe even going 7 generations back. We call this epigenetic. It's inherited. And then there's a soul reason, right? And these are some of the ways we can look at healing. Everything is a mirror of another thing. So for example, I have this shoulder injury on my right side. My sister has it as well. We can't quite put our hand all the way up to scratch our shoulder blade. It's like I call it the being under arrest position. My father has that same thing. When he was fleeing from the communists, he was a refugee. He was arrested many times, 5 or 6 times, put in jail, and he eventually had to, swim his way from China to Hong Kong just to, flee for his life. And so, he's faced a lot of violence and abuse. And me and my sister both have the same thing, the same exact physical injury as my father. So that's an example of a physical thing that is ancestral, right? That's inherited. Another thing that has an emotional physical thing was my knee. I had this recurring chronic knee issue on my left side. The knee represents self-judgment, self-criticism. Growing up with very, like a tiger mom and very perfectionist kind of parents who just wanted their kids to, do the best because, they were refugees. There was a lot of pressure to succeed and to be excellent. And so I was really hard on myself. So that self-criticism was a mental, emotional story that then played out in my knee. So there's many, many, many different examples with this and that I've seen with phobias in clients, very inexplicable phobias, cancers that then have a deeper mental, emotional story behind it, right? That then play out in the physical. And so this is what the world of healing really explores, the unseen reason as to why that thing is happening on the physical dimension. And so the body is very much where things play out. So we call this a psychosomatic experience, which is an interconnected phenomena of the psyche, which is another word for the mind, playing out as the soma, which is a Greek word meaning the living body. So Bruce Lipton, who wrote The Biology of Belief, actually talks a lot about how the biochemical effects of the brain's functioning show that all the cells of your body are affected by your thoughts. And there's been lots of research, placebo research, nocebo research, showing how belief literally changes the chemistry of your cells. And we know this when we can psych ourselves out, or we have this expression in the English language and we can almost give ourselves a panic attack if we can if we really try to do that and start spinning a loop of self-sabotaging thoughts. Or we can, my mom growing up, whenever she was about to get sick, she would always say, and she taught this to us, she goes, I'm doing really well and I'm not getting sick, and I'm feeling vibrant and lively, and I have a lot of energy. And she would say this almost like a mantra to herself. And she taught this to us as kids. And she wouldn't, if she did get sick, it would be very quick and she would recover quickly. So, this is the psychosomatic experience, using thoughts as a tool to change the physical body consciously, but also psychosomatic experiences can play out unconsciously. You can be going on autopilot and your body is just going through the motions of all the conditioned belief systems that are running through your body. You can have inherited patterns that play out in your body. So that's what we call epigenetics, which is the study of how the environment and behavior change can alter gene expression, which then affect future generations. There have been lots of study on mice who were trained to fear the smell of acetophenone, and then that fear was passed to their offspring, and it changed their sperm. And that fear was a learned fear, and it made them, the offspring, more sensitive to that smell. So fear is inherited, right? Certain behavioral patterns are inherited. And, that leads us to ancestral imprints. So if that's happening in mice, right, we saw that also through the Dutch hunger winter of 1944 to 45. It showed pregnant women who were exposed to famine switch on the IGF-2 insulin-like growth factor gene, which led to higher risk in obesity and diabetes, right? And then the FKBP5 stress gene, which is linked to PTSD and depression and anxiety disorders, were found to be switched on in Holocaust survivors and their offspring. And, I've actually worked with a lot of people who are the product of Holocaust survivors. And, though they themselves did not live through the Holocaust, they felt this depression, inexplicable depression that was just, being part and parcel of having parents who went through the Holocaust and working through the energy of that, and then having to clear that through their energy field. So this is part of energy healing work as well. So can we alter the gene expression, which is really the scientific way of saying, can we alter our energy expression? And yes, we can through physical factors. We have to be eating living foods, proper nutrition, lots of leafy greens, and making sure we're having the right micronutrients and making sure we have probiotics and the gut biome is healthy and functioning. We have to have proper exercise because sweat helps us to detox and to get the circulation system and the lymph system clean. We have to be in safe environments. We need good sleep, right? These are physical ways that affect our genes. And then mental, emotional factors. We want to look at how our relationships are. Are we in toxic relationships that are not healthy for our mental health? Are our relationships creating more stress or less stress? How do we even process stress? Do we have a good system for that? How are we dealing with emotional overwhelm? How are we even dealing with trauma? So my parents, are very traumatized. They had a lot of war trauma, and they haven't processed it. They're from a very different generation. And because of that, they raised me and my siblings a certain way. And you can lash out at people when you don't deal with your trauma, right? And so that then affects your own gene expression and, of course, what you pass on to your offspring. So energy is simply life moving through us. It's the expression of our mental, emotional stories that then get shared when we walk into a room, even through the pauses when we don't speak. So how do you experience energy? Well, mainly through the body. You can have physical tingles, goosebumps, maybe a butterfly in your stomach, a frog in your throat, warmth, cold, heaviness, lightness, vibration. So many physical sensations, textural. You can have an emotional sensation, mad, glad, sad, right? There's only 6 or 7 basic human emotions. And if you are, let's say, flat in your personality, deadpan, we call this a flat affect, and you don't express, you're not animated with your emotions. Oftentimes it means there's some sort of trauma in the field that is keeping your emotional body from expressing. Maybe you were told at a young age, don't, express, or whatever it was. You can experience energy through your mental. This is kind of where most of the population is very skilled at. right? Through thoughts, images, beliefs, through inner dialogue. We can also experience, and this is something I've been working on a lot with clients, is the ancestral. People having memories, flashbacks, regressions in real time while I'm working on them on the table, or even in dream time, the day after, where they have all this information around their upbringing and their parents' upbringing, and even maybe 3, 4 generations back sometimes, about why they are the way they are. That the DNA is carrying this ancestral imprint. And then you can experience energy through past life or soul consciousness themes. That can happen also through dream or through visualization or just, you know, in a daydream as you're just sitting there and having this deep inner knowing of, oh, I've been here before and I know why this thing keeps happening to me, this recurring theme of maybe attracting the same kind of partner, right? And so your soul tends to move through different incarnations trying to learn this lesson. Until it's fully learned, you're going to keep experiencing it again and again through the different people and the situations you meet. And so these are the ways that you can experience energy in life. So soul healing is really connecting the inner and the outer. Whatever you're sensing, your soul is sensing information to bring it in, and then that's being perceived through your higher, you know, that inward perception is coming from your higher mind. You could call the higher mind your higher self or your soul self, right? It's your soul sensing for your optimal information. Then it goes into your body, it goes into your brain. Your brain is like a receptor. And then you can either take that information and go into a limited state of awareness where you make very egocentric choices, very selfish choices, or you can go into an expanded state of awareness and take care of your community and your family and do things that are more selfless. And it moves out through your body, through action, through your choices. So that perception goes into outward conception through maybe you're now building a nonprofit that helps support, you know, orphans in Nepal or something. I don't know, right? Whatever the body in action is, it's the creation of something that your soul has sensed. And then you can also create things that are more egocentric from a limited state of awareness. So this is kind of how all healing works, is the combination of the inhale and the exhale, the internal and the external. And then we have a choice. We either come from this expanded place or a limited place. So in the shamanic world, we use 4 directions in the Andean Medicine Wheel that are connected to the four winds and the 4 states of consciousness and the 4 elements. So we start first here in the south, which is represented by the serpent. Now, the soul speaks through symbols. Just like in dreams, we receive symbols. The indigenous cultures around the world, they looked at the symbols, and the symbols tell a story. And we can learn a lot through the stories. So if you think about a serpent, the serpent is shedding. They're shedding their skin. They're connected belly to earth. They're listening to the rhythm of the earth. The serpent is also very ancient, right? So it's connected to the old stories, and it's all about release and letting go. And so this can be more of an egocentric experience, which is not bad, right? Because all of us have gone through egocentric experiences when we were growing up. There's a phase when you are an adolescent and you're like, you don't want your mom to hold your hand anymore, and it's all me, 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 me. Like, this is the clothing I like. This is how the music I like. This is what I want. Knock on my door before you come into my room. Me, 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 me. Right. This is very natural. Right. The serpent is related to the physical body and ailments and disease. So the theme here is I release the past. And when we work with the serpent energy, it's very much about going into the body. Sometimes twitches and shakes. And it's just a way for the body to discharge energy. Just like if you were to go, hand first at a cobra, they would, as a reflex, just come and snap at you, right? The body is just doing its thing. So sometimes people in shamanic energy healing, their bodies just starts twitching, and it's just old energetic charge discharging. So it's nothing strange. I mean, they call this neurogenic tremoring. in animals. If you ever seen on YouTube videos of wild animals like polar bears or deer going through very traumatic experiences, running away from captors in the wild, what they do is they stop when they find a safe place, they get down and they start to twitch and they shake, right? And this is very much the south energy. Then when we get to the west, we're connecting to the puma or the jaguar, any of the felines really. The element is water, and we're having more of a mental, emotional relationship to, all of our, stories, to our intimate social relationships with family, with our lover, with lovers, maybe, or our friends. We're looking at our belief systems, our inner dialogue. The theme here is I practice non-attachment. Now, it's an ethnocentric theme here in the West because it's very much related to your close circle. So ethno meaning tribe. Who's your tribe? Who do you belong to? And what are the stories I tell myself to belong to that tribe? When you were, let's say, in high school, some kids were like, I want to be with the cool kids. And so maybe you were people pleasing and doing things that were out of your integrity just to belong to that cool kids club. And then some of the other kids were like, I don't want to be in anybody's club. And they were the loner and the goth kid in the corner. And they were, like, get away. People keep out. I hate people, right? And so then they're very, sure of themselves, and they have certain belief systems that lead them to not be in a social circle. So Puma is very much about. If you think about a Puma, they're excellent trackers. So when we're working with the Puma, we're trying to track into why we are the way we are. We ask who, what, where, when, why. Why do I think this thought? Who taught me that? Was it mom? Was it dad? Did I learn that from uncle? Was it grandfather? These are the things that we start to track, and we start to go into the past, into the subconscious. Then we get to the north, which is represented by the hummingbird. The element is fire. And this is connecting to our ancestry, rewriting old intergenerational stories in the DNA and embodying a new story and a new purpose. So the theme is I connect to my higher purpose. So the north direction in a lot of indigenous cultures is where the ancestors come in from. Father Mountain is connected to here. Also in Tibetan culture, it is, and also in most East Asian cultures, it is believed that when the person dies, the soul actually leaves from the north. So, there's this connection to the ancestors is very common across the board. And we're working with an altruistic or a world-centric theme now. We're no longer tribal now. We're service-oriented. The hummingbird is wanting to spread joy and delight into the world. I mean, the hummingbird's job literally is to drink 1,000 to 2,000 flowers a day and to just go flower to flower. So, and the hummingbird is very present. It goes from one flower to the next. It doesn't know when it's going to have its next burst of nectar. It just has to trust in the universe and to go step by step. It also has these itty bitty wings, and it looks like it wasn't designed to fly, but it does a lot of work very purposefully, and it flies massive migration patterns and distances. And so the hummingbird represents purpose. Like I'm gonna do my work and find effort in that, and also to love it. And so this is the fire element is really the fire of passion, the fire of love. And then we move to the east, which is represented by the condor, also the eagle, these big birds of prey. Element is air, and we're working with the soul here now. This is your soul's journey through many, many lifetimes. And so, you don't have to necessarily subscribe to reincarnation, but maybe you have this sense that you've been here before, right? Just strictly speaking from an objective point of view, if you're looking at, science, like energy is never created or destroyed, right? That is physics 101. And so your soul, your consciousness was never created or destroyed. It's just moving through different experiences. So this is about surrendering to the larger mission of your soul's journey. So AKA the lessons that your soul is meant to be learning and the ones they have not learned yet, and embodying as a steward or guardian of the universe. This is where you're more mission driven in your career. So people who are very connected to the East energy, they're very into a cosmocentric view. They're trying to shift big models, and they're trying to shift, not just, their personal stuff and their family stuff, but they're really looking at, like, how is this affecting the world? How is this affecting the environment? How is this affecting the universe? Right. And so the theme here is I dream a new world into being. And if you think about the condor, they are a bridge between the material world and the spiritual world. And so this is the Andean Medicine Wheel. And it's connected. Each of these different directions are connected to a state of consciousness and a different perspective. So the serpent is connected to the unconscious. Remember the cobra with the reflex? It just twitches because it is pre-rational. It moves towards something it likes, and it moves away from something it finds dangerous. And then it's about naming. This is the perspective. When we put a name to something that's unconscious, we shine light on the issue by calling it out loud. And when we name things that are unconscious, labeling actually calms the amygdala, which is this part of the brain that is what we call the fear center. And it goes spidey sense alert and it goes, hey, get out of here, danger, danger. But when we are able to put a name to it, that fear center calms down. The puma is all about the subconscious, the belief systems we talked about. Here, the perspective is claim. Claiming means that you own the experience by feeling all of the emotions fully, whether that's a positive emotion or a negative emotion, without avoiding it. And unfortunately, in our culture, we have this sense of false positivity. Just be happy, even if you're angry, right? Anger is a primary human emotion. Just like volcanoes explode, volcanoes are allowed to explode. However, if volcanoes exploded all the time, we would have no, life to, everything would be on fire. So it's not about, avoiding the volcanic anger that you may feel. It's about safely letting it out, let the steam out. And then once the weather clears, you move on with your day, right? And that's how we should be functioning with our emotions. When we feel sadness or grief, we have to feel it and let it come out. Just like rain comes through, we got to let the rain come through, and then the sun will come back. And it's about cycling through the positive and negative emotions, claiming them without running from them. When we avoid them, that's when emotions get repressed. Repressing emotions keeps the nervous system in fight flight. It increases stress hormones. It's been shown to have an impact on cardiovascular issues, hypertension, weakened immune system, and also depression. And if we don't have good emotional vocabulary, which is basically expressing emotions, it actually inhibits your ability to connect to your spiritual guides, to connect to a more meaningful life. Because people who receive dreams, if you know people in your life who receive this kind of, they get visions, right? You have to have a strong emotional field. You have to be willing to feel your emotions. And so this is part of the claim. Now, when we go to the north, the hummingbird, the state of consciousness is conscious. This is where we're consciously trying to make life happen. We're trying to design our life. The perspective here is frame, which is all about recontextualizing the stories that we've been told, that we tell ourselves, by redefining old experiences and creating new frameworks, rituals, and strategies to move forward. So when we tell a new story to ourselves, we're basically changing the neurochemistry of our brain. The prefrontal cortex, frontal part of the brain, it boosts. The nervous system rewires. Neuroplasticity increases, which basically means your brain gets more flexible. And so the hummingbird, the conscious hummingbird, is trying to rewrite the narrative, so to speak. It's like, you hear this oftentimes with, when I see this with like new parents, they go, I don't want to parent my kid like how my parents parented me. That is an example of conscious framing. Unfortunately, it's not enough to just say that, because you have to work on it energetically, because you are your parents. You are the collection of stories that your parents gave to you. So unless you energetically work through those stories, you're kind of still unconsciously passing those stories down. However, that is the right spirit. Then we move to the east, the condor, and the consciousness state here is super conscious. The perspective is game. When you name stuff, claim it, and then you frame the story again, life becomes a game. Comedians are really good at this. They start to laugh at the pain. There is a levity in how you relate to life. You don't take things so seriously. You can laugh at yourself and compost the old pain stories into inspired teachings to share collectively. If you're watching a really good comedian and they're talking about some traumatic thing that happened to them, there's humor in it, right? And then we can laugh about them because they're talking about themselves, but we can see ourselves in the comedian, and that's why it's so funny, because now they've removed themselves from the pain of the situation. Maybe when that thing happened to them, it was really painful at the time, but then they found a way to inspire others by making comedy out of it, right? And studies have shown that the PNS, which is the parasympathetic nervous system responsible for rest and digest and calming us down, increases. It gets boosted when we laugh at our stuff. Our endorphins are upped, and our ventral vagal system, which is that system that is very much about safety, social bonds, and co-regulation, that gets strengthened. The immune system is boosted. We lower down in depression and anxiety. So this is all research on laughing, right? Can we laugh at ourselves? And you can see, when there are grumpy people around you and they can't, take a joke, it's hard to be around. I mean, that means that this energy on the east is a little bit contracted. So we want to make sure that all 4 states of consciousness are expanded, right, and fully resourced and utilized, because we're utilizing all of the 4 perspectives to look at the different situations and relationships in our lives. So when we're going into a shamanic energy process through breath work or through energy work, we're activating 4 main systems. So again, going through the 4, we start from the south. So we have the unconscious, and that's, again, the body moving through different gestures. Sometimes the body is just moving, and there's not necessarily a story attached to it. It might be twitching. You might get itchy on your skin or get hot all of a sudden. Your nervous system starts to do funny things with electricity. Maybe you're getting electrical up and down impulses. The temperature can change. It gets hot and cold and warm, and then it feels like you're underwater or you're flying through space. That's more spatial perception. So you may feel like you're in a big room and in a small room and in the air, and then maybe you're like deep in the cave. Your sense of balance may start to change. Your main sense organs are kind of activated, right? And then the skin, the anus, the genitals, the hands, the feet these are the locomotion tools in the yogic science. They start to get active, right? You start to feel sensation through these areas. Some people feel, tingles in their hands, or their hands go into certain claw gestures, or, the feet get tingly, or they start to curl, and everything means something. But in the unconscious, the body is just kind of experiencing itself or discharging energy, as I said earlier. So we call this kinesthetic movement that doesn't necessarily have a story, but energy is just expressing itself through. Then the other system is, in the West, is subconscious. This is emotional, the feelings that you feel. So you might then all of a sudden feel sad that you're, that you acted a certain way, viciously to your best friend. You were really ashamed, let's say, about something you did, and some habit or pattern. And so then you feel that sadness, and then you start to cry, right? Or you might have different sensations. So there's sensations, and then there's the emotions. So sensations could be like pinpricks, could be like, for example, like a heaviness on the chest or the shoulders doesn't necessarily always mean grief. A sensation of that heaviness could also feel like I feel overwhelmed and burdened by all the things I have to do on Monday, right? So sometimes the sensations, they share similar qualities to certain emotions. Your pain body can get activated. For example, when I was a kid, my parents gave my tutors, we used to have like after school tutoring, they gave them permission to hit us when we misbehaved. So I used to get hit with like a ruler on the back of my neck every time I didn't listen. And I really didn't listen as a kid. So I had this like pain when I was doing a lot of work, energy work with some of my teachers, like 20 years ago, to release these stories in my neck, and my neck would twitch, and I would have like a flashback of these feelings of not being good enough, not being smart enough as a kid. When I was having my neck worked on, my neck would start going to the south and start twitching, and then I would feel the pain of the time when I got hit in the neck by this ruler, right? So that can happen. Now, conversely, you can also have pleasure, right? So pain and pleasure. So I've also had energetic experiences where I felt a lot of pleasure. My body remembered like, oh, that's what joy feels like. That feels good. So pain and pleasure. Then your voice typically, goes. When people are going through emotional things, like a release of a burden is like, oh, thank God, like I just released that burden, right? Oftentimes we're taught to like not voice it out. So we keep everything in, and then it actually, in Chinese medicine, when you don't release your emotions through sound, that emotion sits in the organs, and then it can build into something that's disease related over time. Your main sense organs start to get switched on. So that's your tongue, your nose, your speech, right? So that's basically eye, ear, nose, mouth, right? Skin. The five senses are very aware now. Then we go to the north, conscious. Maybe you then have a flashback of a memory, like I did when I was talking about my childhood. You might get a visual of something in the past, or sometimes the future. You might get a roadmap of where you're going. Certain thoughts come to you, maybe words or images, concepts. I was teaching a retreat, and there was this engineer on retreat, and in one of our shamanic processes, for weeks and weeks and weeks, I mean, I know nothing about engineering, but he all of a sudden got this download of these concepts and kind of like a map of how to solve this engineering problem. And it came to him in this expanded state of awareness. It wasn't coming from, because all of a sudden the guard was dropped and energy's flowing, and you're not necessarily thinking about work, and then the concept dropped in. So that happens sometimes when you're in shamanic energy healing. And then your main sense organs, your eyes and your ears, because they're more related to the conscious, right? They're very perky. So we call this the cognitive. And then here in the center, I have the energetic, right? So energetic simply is a combination of all these three things: the kinesthetic, the emotional, the cognitive. When we have an energy experience, all of these three things are switched on. That's why I have it here in the center. And it feels electromagnetic. If you ever rub your hands together and you open your hands a little bit apart, you feel the energy there. There's a bit of a magnetism there, if you want to try that, right? You start to feel that. Some people call that the tingles, or you start to feel fields of energy around you, or some people even see the energy around in colors. I sense and feel more of it, and I can feel where it is and how far it extends out to. The wisdom body in the yogic tradition of the subtle body, this is the layer of the body that has this intuition, or we call it the felt sense. You don't know how you know what you know, but you just know it. Like I've been working with some people who are just having these spontaneous knowings of something that happened in their family line, 4 or 5 generations ago, and they just know. They're like, oh my God, my body remembers, this violation that happened in the trust in my mother's line, or my father's line. And I don't want to go into the details of what happened to their family line, but they just know. And Then your soul body, this is even more subtle. It's not your soul starts to give you messages, or your higher self is like, hey, I got to show you something. So you know who you are more truthfully. You may start to get divine inspiration. Symbols also start to pop in, and then you go into a state of selfless surrender where everything just opens, and that's where transformation happens. So that's really all energy work is. It's a combination of all of these three systems, and then the energetic experience of everything dancing with each other. So the energy is then expressed and experienced through how you relate to your chakra system. So not everyone's aware of how the chakras are functioning. So what are chakras? Chakras in the Sanskrit language, they mean wheel or a disc. It's a disc of energy, kind of like how in this image they're often depicted with different flowers and lotuses, because when the yogis meditated, they saw and they perceived that. In the Andean tradition, in the high mountains of Peru, they also saw them as a disc. They call them nyawis, which means eye, like a EYE. They saw them as these eye discs of energy, also moving in this rainbow-like color, which is also fascinating because the two cultures, as we know, we don't really know if they had any sort of connections to each other. And the chakras act as this kind of interface between your soul's consciousness and the fields of energy that are following your soul through the different incarnations to your physical experience in this body right here, right now. And so I think of them as bridges between the spiritual realm and the material realm. So when you have your chakras spinning in this optimal way, your life force feels full and dynamic. When there are holes or deficits in your energy field, it affects then your chakras, right? The field is affecting the chakras, right? There's this field around you that's quite that can be quite large or quite contracted and small, depending on what's happening in your life. And then it changes how the chakras are. The chakras are, they're said to be around the spinal centers, and around the spinal center, so your spine, going back to the spine, your spine, when it's stiff and rigid, right, it says something about how the energy is moving through your chakras. When there's fluidity and malleability through the spine, right, the physical is representing something that's happening on a subtler dimension. So we're going to go into the chakras in the energy body. So we're going to start this is where you can get your journal, by the way, and do a little chakra quiz. So the root chakra, we call Muladhara in Sanskrit. Element is earth. It's the serpent archetype. The color is red. It's related to the genitals, the ovaries and the testes. It's connected to the sense of taste and tongue. And if there are issues in the lower body, like sciatica, prostate issues, arthritis, eating disorders as well, constipation, low blood pressure, colon stuff, bone joint stuff of the legs, fibromyalgia, obesity, and any of these types of presenting physical symptoms, there may be something to look at in terms of the root chakra energy. It's related to, from a psyche sense, it's related to the sense of security, feeling a sense of groundedness and stability, confidence, independence, and resourcefulness. The shadow of it is feeling a lot of anxiety, worry, or fear. So if there's a lot of inexplicable phobias or fear of like death, or, if there's just a lot of fear coming up, there's often an imbalance in the root. If there's a lot of fatigue, fibromyalgia and these inexplicable autoimmune diseases that Western medicine doesn't really know the cause of, there's often a root issue, right? And the themes are around safety, belonging, family, tribe, home, money, the material world, not feeling that you're grounded enough in the material world, and then also birth and death. So we know that the chakras are these energetic discs, right? So the emotional, mental stories that you tell yourself, they will affect your chakra excess, or what we call deficit. Is there enough energy? Is there not enough energy? Is there a balanced amount of energy? So I want you to rank each of these statements on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being very low, and then 10 being like super high, 5 being like balanced down the middle. So I have is the key word in the root chakra. So if you were to say out loud, I have safety within my body. So I want you to write that down in your journal. And if you say, I have safety within my body, and like you're just shuddering saying that, and that makes no sense to your body, that might be towards the one side. If it feels like you're like overly confident, like, of course, yeah, I walk everywhere and I'm just like, I just push people out of the way, and I'm, then that might be on the 10 side. If you feel this sense of balance, like, yeah, I go places and I feel safe in my body, that's a 5. I have safety within my home and environment. I have a place where I truly belong. I have a supportive connection to my roots and ancestral ties, because, root chakra is also about, even if you are adopted, it's about feeling connected to something, even if it's not your birth family, that do you feel rooted to the people who are around you, to your chosen family, even, right? If you don't have a biological family. So to the place on which you were born, and also to the place where you come from, or the place that you don't even know, like there's this kind of tie and feeling supported in that connection, right? I have a healthy relationship to money and material security. Right? These are all root chakra themes. So take a moment. You can even pause this, and you can read the statements out loud, see how they land. Because if you are feeling a certain kind of way, emotionally, let's say, about some of the statements, right? You got to honor that. So no one's going to look at this quiz, but for you. And then this will give you an idea of like, oh, my root chakra is either in a deficit or in an excess, or it's kind of optimal in a balanced way. So this is a self quiz. We move on to the next chakra. We are at the sacral chakra, which is the element of water. This is around your belt line, around the womb area in a woman. So your sacral bone is that flat triangular bone at the base of your spine. And then in the front, you have your navel, and then it's that navel center region where you will put your belt. The archetype is the puma. Orange is the color. The adrenal glands, which are the glands that sit above the kidneys. And we have the sense of smell. If there are any issues in the adrenal, so people are suffering from adrenal fatigue, they're just constantly tired, right? A sense of like being chronically stressed, fight and flight. The stress hormones are being secreted from there, from the adrenal glands. That is being wired all the time, and being wired and tired. That's kind of chronic fatigue. That is a second chakra issue. Bladder issues, UTI issues, chronic lower back stuff, pelvic pain, menstrual cramps that are really painful, like spasming menstrual cramps, PMS, liver and lower ab issues, digestive issues, spleen issues, lymphatic system stuff, reproductive organ issues, fertility, sexual dysfunction, a low or an overactive libido, right? This is part of that deficit excess. The psyche themes are creativity, vibrancy, optimism, playfulness, delight in pleasure, and satiated. So when the sacral chakra is optimal, there's a feeling of like, oh, I know what I want, and I take pleasure in delight. There's also the excess. We can become gluttonous, but then there's also, the people who are like, no pleasure for me. I'm going to punish myself. I'm going to go on this diet forever and ever. I'm going to be on keto for the whole year, and just, I got to lose weight, right? So there's the balance of that, right? We're not going into extremes here when we're talking about balanced energy. The shadow here is fight flight, right? The adrenal glands are like wired and tired. There's a shadow of abuse, being either the violator if it's excessive in the energy, or in the deficit, it's being violated. There's repressed expression here. Maybe there's carrying of some sort of trauma. There's guilt, and then codependency. So codependent relationships would be like, I don't know who I am without that person. I need you in order to survive. It's too much, right? There's no sense of independence. So that's the shadow side. The themes are self-worth, creativity, intimacy, sexuality, vitality, and desire. So now rank these statements. You can read them out loud. And reading them out loud really helps you just feel how it lands in your body. Maybe you say it and your body like starts to tingle somewhere. Like that's going to be telltale as to what that means. I feel vitality when I express my emotions. Are you someone who, when you're happy, you're happy? When you see something sad on the movie screen, you actually allow yourself to cry, or are you like deadpan the whole time and you just, I was working with a gentleman who was like, I'm sad. I'm really, really sad. And he thought he was feeling sadness and grief, but he wasn't. He was thinking it. He had shut down the emotional system. So where are you on that scale of emotional expression? I feel in touch with my creativity to express myself freely. Do you like to create things? Do you draw? Right? It's not all about actual artwork. A lot of people associate creativity with art, but it's about creating things, even if you're, a banker, right? There's creativity in creating new programs and systems or building projects from the start, from the ground up, right? Or building companies. They're the architects, right? Build things, create things differently from how a dancer creates things. So it's about expression of yourself. That's what creativity is. I feel comfortable exploring and expressing my sexuality, So, growing up as a, closeted gay kid, I was very not comfortable expressing my sexuality. And now I am. Like, I don't necessarily care about how people think about me. Do you care about how people see you in your sexuality? Are you, do you cover yourself up? That's part of your sexuality. Are you comfortable wearing things that express, your inner nature? Not necessarily like, oh, I'm dressing this just because I want to look for sex, but it's more of like, I'm dressing in the way that I'm dressing to express myself because I'm comfortable in my sexuality and I'm okay being seen, right? This is part of the sexuality expression. I feel connected to my true passions and desires. Do you know what you want, basically? Do you know what brings you delight and pleasure? And are you doing those things? Or are you doing something that's totally left field in your job to your true passions and desires? And that happens sometimes. And when that happens, it dampens someone's sacral chakra field. I see this happening with a lot of people in corporate careers that, they somehow have compartmentalized their lives and they're like, oh, I just do this so that I can do my passion and desire. And that's totally cool if that feels right for you. But sometimes it doesn't feel right for some people, and that lowers their sacral energy. I feel worthy of pleasure and abundance, right? This is especially if you grew up in a household that was taught that pleasure was wrong. If you grew up in a very religious household, let's say, and abundance also is part of this, is part of the sexual life force energy. Abundance is, if you look around in nature, there's millions and billions of leaves and seeds, and it's never ending. Nature is abundant, and nature is you look at animals, they just are, they go into pleasure without, you look at mammals specifically, like dolphins and dogs, right? If they want pleasure, and monkeys especially, they will go get it. But with a lot of religious wounding, oftentimes we're taught that pleasure is wrong, and you're taught to shut and squash it down, which then shuts down your ability to feel abundant. Abundant doesn't just mean money. It's about resources, tapping into your network to support you, right? Feeling abundant in your social connections so that you can do what you love. Okay, so see how those statements feel for you. You can pause anytime. Moving on, so we have now the solar plexus, which is a couple of inches above your navel, right? And this is around the stomach area. And we have the element of fire, the hummingbird, color yellow. The glands are the pancreas, which is right next door to the stomach. The sense of it's seeing, and the eyes. So if there's issues with the kidneys, now a lot of the first three chakras, because the main organs are here, a lot of them are A lot of the presenting body symptoms are similar, but the reasoning can, it depends depending on what the mental emotional pattern is. It doesn't necessarily matter like, oh yeah, that's a solar plexus or that's a sacral issue area. A lot of the first three chakra stuff, they bleed into each other. So just so you know. So again, bladder stuff, UTI stuff. If there's any food allergies, eating disorders, food addictions, any addiction for that matter, can be solar plexus related. Weight gain, bloating, indigestion, ulcers, stomach disorders, issues with the pancreas, like pancreatic cancer, endocrine system issues, diabetes, hypoglycemia, gallbladder, liver, hepatitis issues, intestines, celiac disease. So I've worked with some people with some of these issues. And what's interesting with people with gallbladder and liver issues, I lived in Singapore for 6 years, and it was not uncommon for me to see women remove their gallbladders, which is a bit scary because the gallbladder liver connection in Chinese medicine is very much about anger. And a healthy amount of anger will go like this. It's like, you should not be polluting the environment because it's going to kill all our animals and it's bad for our ecosystem. And how are we going to eat and provide for our children, right? That kind of anger, then when it's rechanneled properly, you then take up a cause where you're fighting for the environment and you're going to the UN and you're doing something that's like, and it's passionate, right? That's a healthy amount of anger, right? Unhealthy anger would be like, I'm not going to feel that. I'm going to avoid it. I'm going to swallow it up and just, what happens to that emotional energy? It goes in. It then sits in your gallbladder and your liver. Another example is someone who cannot get angry about something. I had a client who unfortunately bypassed the entire process of anger over someone who had sexually abused this person. So this client who had received this sexual abuse, not that they refused, but their system had shut down to feeling angry about it, to the point where it festered into a cancer, unfortunately. And so sometimes when we hold on to emotional frequencies like anger, for example, in the liver and the gallbladder, it eats away at the organ and it needs to be discharged, right? And feeling anger, again, is a very foundational thing for being a human. It's the holding on to anger is what is in excess, and that's not great. So when we get angry, we feel it, we understand what it's about, and we move through it, and then we have to somehow move on. And so that's a healthy processing of anger. When it's not processed and it goes into a deficit or an excess, that's when we can get some body symptoms happening. So that's just an example. The psyche is about sovereignty. So another way of saying independent, authenticity, joyful, feeling focused, and personal power. The shadow here is, being egocentric, egoic, mistrust in the self, second guessing yourself, feeling a lot of shame, right? So oftentimes people with abuse, they feel ashamed that it was their fault. And then that can implode in depression, anger, perfectionism. The themes are about transformation, ego, control, power, desire to manifest, action, and confidence. So these statements, write down and read them out loud to yourself. I know I am capable of achieving my goals. So how good are you at finishing what you started? I know when to set boundaries that honor me. Are you good at saying no, or do you say yes all the time? Some people say yes all the time. Some people say no all the time, right? We want the balance of yes and no. So boundaries are not just about no. It's about yes and no in the right balance, so long as it's aligned with you. I know my inner power guides my choices. So this is another way of talking about confidence. Do you know, right? The key word of the solar plexus is I know. I know this is right. So I'm going to let that power guide me in my choice. Even if everybody else is against it, I'm going to stand my ground. That's the inner power. I know all my actions are guided by inner confidence. Very similar to the third one. You know, are your actions guided by this force that stands true to your values? Confidence is like, these are my values, I'm sticking to them. I know who I am and the values I stand for. So the last three, are very similar. They're just different ways of saying it, and they may hit you a different way. So it's about knowing in the third chakra. Do you know who you are? Do you know what you stand for? Do you have integrity? Integrity is very much part of the third chakra. All right, moving on to the fourth chakra, we have the heart chakra. The element is air. Condor is the archetype. It's the color green. The gland is the thymus, which sits right here at the center of the sternum. It's this very small gland that is responsible for our immunity. The sense of touch, it's a sense of touch. So if there's issues with the heart, circulation, blood-related disorders, pressure, so that could be blood pressure, hyper or hypo, like too much or too little blood pressure, respiratory issues, because the lungs are right there, asthma, pneumonia, lungs, bronchitis, breast tumors, cysts, breast cancers, upper back stuff, shoulders, arms, hand stuff, immune system issues. This is all fourth chakra related. The psyche is about thoughtfulness. So thoughtfulness meaning I care about you. So I'm showing a level of care and respect, empathy and compassion, right? It's about consideration for the other person. This is the heart. It's not just me, 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 me. It's like, oh, we are here together. How can I help you? Right? Shadow, overwhelm, grief, lack of boundaries, attachment. So the heart is very much about expanding our connection and belonging to not just ourselves, but with other people, whether it's a lover or family members or a bigger social circle. And so we can get overly attached to what we want the other person to how we want them to act. And, so that's what the attachment is. We get really upset when the other person doesn't do what we want them to do. So that's a conditioned way of the heart chakra, whereas an unconditional love would be, okay, this is what I want, but that's what you want. I respect that, right? So that would be a healthy heart chakra. The themes are around love, relationships, connection, and boundaries. So these are the statements. I love and accept myself fully. So I love others with compassion while honoring my boundaries. See how that feels in your heart. Are you able to let others be where they're at, but also know that maybe you can't help them? And so maybe you might say, no, I'm going to give you some advice and I can send you to somebody else, but I can't actually support you in this. Or do you people please and let them, drag you down with them if you're not able to support them, right? So that's what compassion is, like that you're able to support someone in a way that you can in your capacity, but you're not going down with the ship, right? I love through forgiveness and letting go of old wounds. Do you forgive easily? Or do you hold on to old wounds all the time? A lot of grudges. I love connecting deeply and authentically with others. How deep are the conversations you have? Are you good at revealing yourself? Are you able to let yourself be seen? This is about deep, authentic connection. Do you just have superficial conversations? Do you not even know what, authentic connection is? Is that not even on your radar? If that isn't, that's kind of on the one side, right? So it means there's a deficit somewhere in the heart chakra, which is not, bad. It's a gauge as to where you are right now in your development. I love giving and receiving harmoniously with others without expectation. So sometimes we give things expecting someone to give us something back in return. Do you give without expectation? Or do you then hold a grudge because someone didn't give you back the thing that you thought they should be giving, right? So check how that is for the heart chakra. Next one is ether, space for the throat. Okay, so element is ether or space. Huascar as the archetype. Huascar was the lord of the underworld. And so, Huascar's archetype here represents what we're hiding underneath the surface, the secrets, the things we mean to say, but we don't say. And so the balance of taking up everything that's buried underneath from the underworld and expressing it in a kind, compassionate way is what Huascar represents. The color is blue. Thyroid's the gland. Hearing and the ears is where we're at with the sense. So any issues with the neck, the jaw, TMJ, like literal thyroid issues. I've worked with people with hyper or hypothyroidism. We know that as Graves' disease or Hashimoto's disease. Oftentimes with hypothyroidism, there is this paternal or authority figure that has kind of shut them up. And often there's like a father theme, not always with the father, but there's always something there that there's an authority figure that's clamping down on what they should be, saying. And so taking away someone's power to speak what they really mean to say. So you might get sore throats or tonsillitis or laryngitis or hearing related issues, respiratory issues, joint issues, vocal speech related issues, or even scoliosis. These are all physical things that might present if there's a throat chakra imbalance. Psyche is about truth. Are you telling the truth? Are you deceiving? Are you lying? Are you not saying what you mean? Are you gossiping, right? Peaceful, expressiveness. Are you able to express in a kind, compassionate way, like I said earlier? Are you considerate? Can you speak your needs and your wants clearly? Or are you holding on to a lot of secrets? Are you overprotective? You see this a lot with some parents, overprotecting. I've seen this in adult clients I've worked with when they had this trauma from it's in their throat chakra because they had parents that overprotected them from some serious secrets that would have been better if their parents just had that serious conversation with them instead of hiding and trying to protect the kid from telling them the secret. And then that led to more trauma and then this throat thing in the client. So, are you overprotecting someone and avoiding the difficult, hard conversation? Are you inexpressive? Avoidant, basically. Suppressed expression. Themes are around communication, sharing, integrity, discernment, truth, music, sound, manifestation. The throat is where we manifest life. If you can't say it, you can't express your needs and your wants clearly, your life is not going to be the life that you want because you're not telling anybody. So that's why manifestation is a theme here. Rank these statements 1 to 10. I speak my truth with clarity and confidence. I speak words that uplift and align with my integrity. So notice how your throat reacts. Did you have a frog in your throat? Are you swallowing? Are you like, oh my God, I definitely don't. Or you're like, oh yeah, I speak all the time, right? Like me, I'm probably more on the excess. I tend to speak too much. And so I need to come more into silence often, right? Maybe you're on the other side of the spectrum. I speak openly about my needs and boundaries. Do you know what you need? And are you able to ask for what you need? Can you ask for support? I speak in a way that aligns my thoughts, words, and actions for an intentional life. Do you say one thing and then do another? Essentially, when you say something, do you then honor that and then follow it through the words do you honor your thoughts with the words and then actions to create a life that's intentional? I speak with kind honesty and listen with non-judgmental presence. How do you speak to others? How do you speak to yourself? What are I like to think of words as casting spells. When you, like sarcasm, for example, if you ever are around sarcastic people, do you notice that self-deprecation, there's a level of truth in what they're saying? They're like, oh, it's just a joke. But then why are they saying that over and over again? And that sense of self-deprecation often becomes a kind of self-harm, to put oneself down, to make oneself seem smaller. So just notice, do you speak with honesty to yourself, kind honesty, and listen with non-judgment, or do you judge yourself through sarcasm? All right, 2 more chakras. So we have the third eye, which is the element of light. The archetype is Quetzalcoatl, who is the feathered serpent in Mesoamerican culture. And the feathered serpent represents, the serpent represents the earth, and the feathered which is like the phoenix, represents the sky. So Quetzalcoatl is considered the morning star or Mother Venus, and represents the integration of the material and the spiritual realm coming together. And so we have the sense as intuition, because it's the bridge between the immaterial and the material together. The color is indigo, and then we have the glands is the pineal gland, which is in the center of the brain. And so if there's any issues up here with the eyes, vision, blindness, nervous system issues, neurological disturbances, seizures, brain disorders, brain tumors, hemorrhages, strokes, insomnia, sleep issues, headaches, migraines, nose sinus issues, learning issues, spinal cord dysfunction, nerves, depression, anxiety, or panic, they can all be third eye related. So it's the psyche is about wisdom, expanded awareness, a psychic connection. A psychic connection really is just a connection of the mind that is connected to a greater mind, the collective unconscious that Carl Jung called, which is connected to a higher wisdom, let's say. The shadow would be if you're in constant doubt or in delusion, right? Seeing things that are not really the truth, like maybe 10 people in the room see it this way, but you see it that way, and you're like, no, I'm right. That's a kind of delusion. Fantasy. Fantasy versus daydreaming, right? I'm using fantasy here as not in a fantasy can be great because it allows us to create new worlds, but fantasy in the way where you would rather retreat to that fantasy versus dealing with real life. Manipulating others and yourself, overstimulation, trying to overstimulate the mind with like gadgets and things just to avoid tapping into something deeper. Addiction, guru groveling. So that would be like putting all your trust, all the eggs in one basket to, let's say, a spiritual teacher. Like I always tell people, like I want you to be your own guru. I'm not your guru. We're all our own gurus, but we look to others for guidance, to remember that we're our own inner master, and that's really how spiritual work really should work. The themes are around intuition, purpose, clairvoyance, visions, dreaming, symbology, and getting inspired messages. So, okay, you can pause at any time. Read these statements out loud. See how this tingles around your ears, your eyes, your third eye, your forehead, the back of your skull. See what happens. I see beyond the illusions of my doubts and fears. It's a very human experience. I have doubts. I have fears for sure, right? I'm sure you do as well. And so when you have those doubts and fears, can you see the greater picture beyond the veil? Can you go, Wizard of Oz, go like open the curtains and see like, okay, my doubts and fears are for a reason. And then you understand the reason, you go through a process of understanding it, and then you move forward. Or do you get stuck in them, right? And then that would be delusion, because the delusion is your doubts and fears are the actual truth, but they're not. So where you are on that scale. I see my life, path, and purpose with clarity, right? And that's a tricky one for some people. And some people are like, I know exactly where I'm going. I have a 10-year plan. Like that might be on the excess side. Whereas some people might be like, I have no idea. Think of purpose also as an expression of your love and your creativity. Are you doing what you love and loving what you do? And are you then, and it doesn't, we're all here to be expressions of love and peace and joy in various ways. Some people are meant to do that through building buildings as an architect. Some people are meant to be doing coaching work. Some people are psychotherapists. Some people are school teachers. Some people are janitors, right? It doesn't matter what career it is, but are you doing your purpose and expressing it in your career choice? I see the wisdom of the symbols in my dreams. Do you pay attention to your dreams? Do you just ignore them? Right? Dreams are constantly coded with symbols, and the Aboriginal people of Australia, they talk about the dream time, and they say that it will be the end of mankind when we stop dreaming. Right? That the dream time is so important. Without dreams, human beings, they cannot progress, they cannot move forward. And so do you pay attention to them? I see through the eyes of intuition with an expanded awareness that goes beyond the physical mind. Right? Are you able to trust and to see into things that are invisible? just like there are so many things that we cannot see. We can only see like a small percentage of reality with the human eye. There are infrared rays, X-rays, electromagnetic waves, radio waves, ultraviolet rays that we cannot see with the physical eye, but we know they're there. So when we look at it through the world with our third eye, you know, when I see things through the third eye, I see images, but not in the way that I see, images in real life. Are you tapped into that? Can you see when you close your eyes? I see how inspiration in every interaction and situation. Oh, I see, scratch the how. I see inspiration in every interaction and situation that I encounter. So that goes for positive, negative, and neutral experiences in your life. When you get fired at work, do you see that? Do you lash out? Or do you see that as like, oh, wow, I can see the big picture. This job was not aligned with my purpose and my life path. One door closes, another opportunity is going to open, and I trust that. And so then every moment is inspiring. How are you on that scale? All right. Last chakra is the crown chakra. So we have here the element of thought, because thoughts create our reality. Just like we said earlier, beliefs change our biochemistry. The archetype is Pachakuti. In the Karo tradition, Pachakuti is the reformer of the worlds. He's the one who restores order and transforms the one pacha is about 500 years. It's like pacha means many things in Quechua. It means a period of time. It also means the earth. It means the reformation of the transformation and restoring things to the right order. And so it really is the archetype of a new world order or new earth, so to speak. The color is violet. The gland is the pituitary, which is the master control gland. There's no sense here because now we're going a little bit beyond the physical body. The physical body symptoms that present can deal with headaches, migraines, seizures, dizziness, tremors, brain-related disorders, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, neurological issues, memory issues, paralysis, severe mental illness, schizophrenia, delusions, or unexplainable depression. I have worked with people with this kind of unexplainable depression, like I said, with the Holocaust products of Holocaust survivors, or one or two generations down. And when we work energetically with restoring the connection to crown, the crown is literally the inverse of the root. So if you look at the image of a tree, the branches of the tree and the roots of the tree are mirrored images of each other. And so the root that connects from the top of the head up to the sky is like the root. It's like a root system, but they're branches that connect to the stars. Right? And so really you can think of it as a reconnection to the stardust that we've come from, because we're all made of stardust, right? If you look at that from not just poetically, but literally, we're made from the dust of stars, from the hydrogen and the carbon and all the things that stars are made of. We are made of that. So the psyche here is bliss, divine connection, trust in higher power, and beyond labels. The shadow here is getting really confused, feeling a sense of separation, like it's, oh, woe is me, it's only happening to me, but it's not. It's happening to everybody, right? We're not islands in our own. Feeling alienated, feeling a sense of apathy or depression. The themes are around pure consciousness, bliss, universal identity, and wisdom. Okay, so rank these statements 1 to 10. I am connected to the divine within and around me. So this is about think about the divine within and around it, as you're fill in the blank with divine. That could be God for you if you use the word God. It could be universe, it could be energy, it could be spirit, it could be the infinite intelligence of something my limited mind can't comprehend, but that's what I mean by divine. It's beyond you, but you can feel the bigness of what's beyond you within you and then also around you. So see where you are on that scale. I am open to higher wisdom and guidance that brings ease and grace. So do you trust in things that you don't understand? Like I've had clients who are very intuitive and they're very connected to seeing symbols, synchronistic events, maybe seeing a bunch of like 1111 and then seeing 1111 on someone's car plates when they're driving, and they're like, whoa, I gotta invest this money into this company or whatever it is, right? And so they're, some of the most successful people are very connected to that higher intuitive place, and they just kind of keep it in the closet, so as not to freak everybody out. But I have witnessed a lot of these people, and they are very connected to the higher wisdom and that guidance that's bringing the messages. So how are you on that scale? Do you listen to that higher wisdom? I am awareness itself. That's a big statement. I am awareness itself, beyond thoughts and the roles assigned to me. So it's kind of like then like how Shakespeare says, all the world's a stage, and each men and women are merely players, right? That we're all wearing these skin suits we call bodies, and we've been assigned certain roles, certain gender expressions, certain kinds of cultural conditionings, and families, right? With certain types of traumas. So if you are awareness itself, do you see your thoughts and the roles that you're assigned in this life as a little bit of a game, like a Sims character almost, and that you can almost like zoom out and go like, yeah, I'll play this role in a very aware way, because it's an expression of the greater infinite intelligence that we were talking about earlier. All right. I am connected to all beings and am part of the infinite web of existence. So, like when you are having a bit of road rage, this is an interesting thing, right? Can you have empathy and compassion that that person in the other vehicle is connected to you? You're all connected in this traffic grid, and you're all part of a web, or do you just get angry at them and feeling this sense of separation and alienation, and just objectify them and just go, oh, get out of my way? But trusting and knowing that there's, I am you, you are me, so I can be compassionate and patient while I'm waiting in this traffic jam, right? Same thing goes for if you get into an altercation. I am you, you are me. The trauma that happened to mother is the trauma that happens to me, so I have to be forgiving to her, because to me and to her, because we're both connected, right? Infinite web of existence. I am a vessel for life to move with me. Oh, I am a vessel for life to move with me, through me, as me, to anchor truth. So with me, through me, as me. You, again, as a skin suit, you are receiving consciousness, your soul's consciousness, and allowing it to play out through this one unique life that you have before you move into another incarnation. So see how all those statements go, and you can re-listen to this again. And that is how the mental and emotional plays out in your energy. So depending on what scores you have, whether you have like more ones or more tens or more fives, you'll see if you're in a deficit, you're in an excess. Like for example, an excess, like a lot of tens would be let's say in the solar plexus, you might present as someone who is like overly pushy, like cocky, like someone walks into the room, like, it's my way or the highway, get out of here, I can't be a team player, right? That could be like excess 10, right? So we're not trying to get all tens. We're not trying to get all ones. Like a balanced chakra system would be like fives using my numbering system here. There's many ways to do a self-rating system. And then that is just your own guidance as to where you are mentally, emotionally, because that's then going to play out as to, most likely, if you were to bring me the chart and I were to scan your energy field, we would feel if that field is more contracted or expanded based off of what you wrote. And so this is a quick and easy, fun way to look at how your energy centers are functioning. And then also we could work oppositely. We can also scan your energy center and then find those belief systems living there. So use this as information for yourself, as where you need to grow, where you need to go to evolve, to develop yourself more in your relationships with yourself, with others. And I hope this was informative and gives you more insight into what energy healing is, what shamanic energy healing is. And thank you so much for watching, and look forward to connecting with you in another video.